Hello, everybody. Welcome back into Debate Night. We've got a bit of an interesting episode today. No man of the people. He's out in Des Moines. Internet connection not working. Hunter's having a week off. So we've just got a small fun cast here to talk over the women's U.S. Disc Golf Championship and all the shenanigans going down there and some other fun topics. So let's hop into things. Hannah is here. What's going on, Hannah?
Not much. It's super hot here in Michigan, so just trying to play disc golf after it gets cooler in the nights, and I'm excited for this episode.
I feel like we need to do a temperature check right now. What's it in Michigan at the moment? What have you guys been dealing with?
I think it's 95. The real feel this weekend was 103.
Okay, yeah, we're 97 here in Virginia. Gary, how about you?
It's 97 here in Lancaster with like a real feel like 105.
97, Roz?
Yeah, we're dealing with that upper 90s in New Jersey. We're all in it right now.
Everybody just getting destroyed. Well, anyways, yeah, Gary's joining us once again, looking to get a dub on the short cast.
Oh, we're not short. There's no short in talent here. We've got some serious heavy hitters here.
That's true. So. I mean, Brody doesn't ever win, so what is it really? And then Roz joining us as well tonight.
Yep, happy to be here. Was out doing some coursework yesterday in the 100-degree heat, and I drank more water yesterday than I think I have in my entire life.
Yeah, I built my kids a play set on Sunday, and I've never lost so many fluids. It was just the stupidest thing ever. But got it done. All right, well, let's hop into things. Talk about the USWDGC. By the way, just an insane acronym. Every time I go to type that out, I'm like, surely there's not this many letters. I must have added one, and no, it just is. So Evelina took home yet another major at USWDGC in what some considered an unusual event if you were to just glance at the leaderboard. Did you find the results to be surprising? And if so, what do you think impacted these said results? Hannah?
Yeah, so I don't find it very surprising that Evelina won. I mean, she's proven herself to be a major winner, which she won World and Champions Cup both last year. But there were four results from the leaderboard that I found quite a bit surprising. The first being least surprising, but most explainable, is Haley Keene, second place. She's averaged about 11th for her last 5 events, and this was her home state. Her familiarity with these courses probably helped her a lot. She's also a former U.S. women's champ, so even though she had struggles on the whole 18 coming down the stretch, like, she was still in it till the very end. The next on the list would be Kristen, sixth place finish. You kind of expect her to win or at least take a top 3 at these types of events. She mentioned in the press conference, though, her toe was still bothering her, even something about maybe needing to wear bigger shoes while playing because of it. And she was still sick, so it's not super surprising to see that she fell down. Misty Gannon took 23rd, so she still made cash, but it was kind of shocking to see her finish so low down the leaderboard. But she started off with a really bad round and just never really caught back up from there. The most surprising, though, is probably Paige Pierce, who finished the tournament in 48th place. So she missed cash, and she's definitely had her struggles through the past few seasons, but unless she's battling an injury that we're not aware of, it was pretty shocking to see her finish so far down the leaderboard. And she has too much skill to be beat by somebody who's sub 900 rated.
Yeah, certainly wasn't the trend with Paige at all in recent events. Gary, how about you? Were you surprised to see where things shook up?
Much like Misty Gannon this weekend, this question wasn't very intimidating. I did not find the list to be very, very surprising, because when you look at the top group of like 9 players, you've got the 4 best European performers there. You have Holland Handley, who's always finishing in the top 5. You've got Cadence and Valerie, who've been 2 recent, monsters on the course. And honestly, Haley and Emily don't surprise me, because they're the kind of players who have the skill to be super competitive. But recently, things like absences and injury have kept them out of the fray. But they have all the skill necessary to be there. I'm not surprised by any of those 9 players. What I am surprised by are some of the things that have already been mentioned. That's Missy Gannon, being the reigning champ, not being there. She had the abysmal round 1 and just, nothing burgers in rounds 2 through 4. And then Paige was gone. And I can tell you what she's suffering with. It's post-festival momentum destruction. Because that's the one thing you got to do to definitely keep yourself going momentum-wise, is take a week off and go to Bonnaroo. But, if you want to get nitpicky, you could argue that Kristen finishing outside second is completely wild and unexpected. And then maybe we haven't seen Evelina and Henna on the tour since Champs Cup. So it could be kind of unexpected to see them on the list here. But what was really surprising, and that there was no cuts at this event. So we got to see someone go plus 68 for the event. at a major. That was great. Also, the other big surprise, and it's actually a really good surprise, and I want to shout her out, Sarah Wadsworth. She won the FJ10 division by 58 strokes. So big props to her and the young New Zealander with the big win this weekend.
There is never a junior featured event without some scores that'll just are just mind boggling. Like somebody is going to shoot insanely over par and somebody's going to win by an incredible margin. It never fails. Ross, what did you think of the way the leaderboard shook up?
Yeah, the end result I wasn't too surprised with, but after round 1 and 2, I was a bit surprised. The leaderboard was quite jumbled, but that was before I had the chance to watch post-produced coverage of Rolling Ridge, in which very tight woods, in which, if you bring in like a Northwood Black style course or this style course, tends to really jumble up the leaderboards because it increases the likelihood in which someone is just a few inches off on a few shots and now all of a sudden they're blowing up. But it ended up shaking out to be a leaderboard that, I wouldn't say it's chalky. I guess it depends on what you call chalky. If you would consider Kristen coming in 5th, which I wouldn't. I don't think that's that big of a surprise. Missy Gannon has showed us that she can just have events where, whether she's not fully locked in, she's just having a bad weekend, finishing in the 20s is not out of the question for her. And I think we've all fallen victim to this maybe 3 years in a row now, which is thinking that because Paige Pierce plays well on the West Coast, that it's going to carry over, for the rest of the year. So even where she finished, and as Gary said, with Bonner being last weekend, who knows how much practice she was getting in or how locked in she was. But her having a finish like this also isn't that crazy. I think it really was those first 2 rounds when you would pull up the leaderboard and see how far out Silva, Kristen, and Missy were. It's like, what the heck is going on? But, after 4 rounds, things kind of shook out to even level.
Yeah. I think a lot of it, early in that tournament, it looked a little crazier. I think the way things shook up, I think if somebody other than Evelina wins that tournament and one of the normals, one of the Holland Hanleys or the Kristen Lotts, I don't think anybody really would have paid a lot of attention. I think Evelina is kind of somebody who it jumps out a little bit when she wins, just because she's not, especially this year, been super consistent, but she is obviously super capable. And when you watch her win, it's not really surprising. The recipe. She outthrows everybody and she makes just enough putts. Speaking of that putting performance, I wanted to get into that with our next topic, because obviously it's kind of the crux of Evelina's tournaments. So which of these statements do you think is more true of this past weekend? Statement 1, Evelina proved that putting in the FPO division is still just a complete non-factor when she throws well. Or 2, the stronger putters in the field just had below average performances, which allowed Evelina to win despite her putting. Which do you think is more true in this case, Gary?
The answer is clearly number 1, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I am not going to use strokes gained tee to green to argue my point here, because there was no cut, and a third of the field finished worse than 25 over par, so that stat's going to be majorly inflated. If you look at all the usual suspects in the field, I compared their weekend to what their normal season average is when it comes to putting. Kristen was 7% worse in C1X, but 13% better in C2. Cadence was 2% better in C1X and 14% better in C2. Holland 3% better in C1X and 37% better in C2. Silva was only 5% worse in C1X, and she was the same as she was in C2. Putting had very little factor this weekend whatsoever. And also putting on the FPO division just isn't very good. Trevor, you were asked on Grip Blocked what a good percentage was, and you said 85%. Newsflash, only one FPO player averages better than 85%, and that's Deanne Carey, and she's 30th on tour. Only 3 FBO players putt over 80% on average. And so here's why it's number 1. If you look at the top 9 players finishing in double digits under par for the event, the worst of those 9 finished in 69th in C1X putting, but the worst finished in 18th for C1 in regulation. So throwing was significantly more impactful to the winning number than the putting was. And Kristen was worse than average in C1 and C2 in regulation. And then the same thing goes for Silva, Hannah, Holland, and Cadence when it comes to C1, but they were all worse in their C1 and C2 in regulation than normal. But you know who did better than average in their C1, C2 in regulation? Evelina, who remains number 1 and number 2 in these respective stats on the season. Throwing was what won this event. And the day that Evelina figures out how to increase her putting stats by 5 to 10% each category, she's going to be the queen of FPO.
Is that true that Deanne's the only one C1X to be 85% on the year?
Yep, she's the only one over 85%.
Wow. That is sobering. I did not realize
only
that.
3 over 80%.
Wow. Okay. Well, Ross, what did you think about the putting and how that shook things up?
Yeah, I mean, Evelina did just enough. Especially in that final round, she was making the 20 footers, the 18 footers, the 25 footers that she had to make to win that event. And I am wondering if it was someone other than Haley that she was battling. If she was battling Kristen or Holland or Missy or a more proven winner. If that final round may have shaken out differently, where maybe she felt like she had a little more pressure on her, but she seemed like she was playing free. Maybe that has to do with like the long break that she's been taking. If you follow her on social media, she seems like she's doing everything besides disc golfing, putting is, anyone who putts knows how mental it is. It's a really simple physical motion, but the mind and body connection, if that's off, that's when you're missing those short putts. But she can just throw the stamp off the disc. I am always so impressed watching her play. And the field, she can be, maybe she's not putting that well on purpose to keep it interesting, because if she was as good of a putter as Kristen or Silva, every event would look like how Gannon looked at the Preserve, where she would just be running away from the field. But also I think, I really do think that first course really did have a huge impact on how this event shook out, to where a few players had really not that great of rounds. Kristen's round was so flat. If she had a mediocre first round, could have been a whole different event. If Missy had a good first round, who knows how things could have shaken out.
Throw the stamp off the disc. That's a fun one. I don't think I've heard that one before. Hannah, wrap it up for us. Do you think it was a lack of putting from others that won this event, or just putting doesn't matter when she's throwing that well?
Well, I think it's kind of both, because we did see the better putters in the field. I mean, they're way down the leaderboard quite a bit. But I've been someone who's argued in the past about how Evelina can win, whether she can putt or not. Like, putting doesn't seem to matter for her. If she's throwing well and having a good day, forget about it. But like Ross pointed out, like, if she was a better putter, like, she would be all over the podium, she'd be winning a lot of the tournaments as well. And I wanted to point out too, like, whole round 1 and round 2, those are at the much harder wooded course in Rolling Hills, and she shot 8 down in round 1. That is a staggering score compared to how the rest of the field did. So even though her rounds 2 and 3 were kind of so-so, she was able to do enough to still pull it off in the end. And it wasn't like she ran away with it either. I mean, she was tied with Haley going into 18, but she was just able to pull it out in the end. But her stats for this event were very similar to her world stats last year. So for C1 in regulation, she was 54% this weekend, which is 10% better than the field. And then she was 74% in C2 in regulation. At Worlds last year, she was 53% and 73% respectively. So putting, like it did last year and this weekend, it didn't really matter for her. She missed some putts, but she also made some C2 putts. But it was just kind of so-so. It would have been interesting to see, though, if Missy or if Kristen or if anyone if anyone else was performing better and it became more of a competition at the end, how that would have shaped out and if we would have had a different result.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, too, it comes down to, do you have to make a putt to win the tournament? Because anytime that Evelina has to make a putt to win the tournament, we saw a famous example last year at the European Disc Golf Festival. She missed a very short putt and lost that tournament. And if you look at Worlds and you look at this event and the others a lot of others she won, it's not like she's having to make a 25 footer for the win, which is, it can be very common, not as much in FPO. I feel like a lot of times they get a good bit of separation, but that's my thing with Evelina is like, yes, when she is throwing well, she is able to win despite her putting. But if anybody is able to force her, I mean, even Haley should have forced her to make a putt. She laid up very poorly on that last hole. She should have had to make a putt, but Haley couldn't get up and down. And then is she making that? My bet's probably no. Like, she made enough putts and threw some better ones, but under the gun like that. And then, then it's a whole different conversation, because then it feels more like the putter rules all. At the end of the day, that's how you get into the basket at the end of the hole and finish it. So I think that's kind of where her career is going to be, where she's going to win events because she will create separation just by throwing it so much better than other players. But anytime she gets in a crunch time, it's all eyes on Evelina to see if she's going to make a putt. It's honestly, it was kind of anticlimactic, because I was really hoping to see that kind of situation. Because honestly, I'd love to see her make one. I think it would do a lot for her mental game there.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm a young like female disc golfer, I'm looking at the current field and what's going on. Sorry if you could hear that. My son is having a hard time with the bath.
That's all right.
I'm focusing so much on trying to balance that throwing and putting, because if I'm thinking to myself, hey, I'm in my like early teens or whatever, or even someone who, like Cadence, right? She's pretty young on tour. If she's looking at the field right now and going, man, if I could really just hammer on my putting skill and continue to work on my throwing, there's a place in history I can carve for myself here. So I'm really curious to see 5 years from now what the stat focus is going to be like, because it's amazing when you look at the stats. There really aren't that many fantastic putters in the FPO side.
Mm-hmm. It feels like there's a lot of imbalance in a lot of the FPO field. You've got people who are good throwers but bad putters, or people that are good putters but they don't throw the farthest, or they are backhand, they don't have forehand. So I think with the emergence of Cadence and some of these younger girls, like we kind of witnessed this weekend, we'll start to see more balance in these next few years.
Yeah,
and even
and Silva also. Like Silva is someone who is very young and can putt super well. But the real reason why Evelina won is because she aced hole 16 round 1.
True.
I mean, imagine the vibes after you're carding your 8 under and you just ace the third to last hole. You're feeling good for the rest of the week.
It's a good day. It's a real good day.
Not the longest throw-in from the weekend though.
No.
Holland had like a 322 foot throw-in.
Yeah, that's right. Which is crazy too, because Evelina's ace was a pretty good one. This coming from a guy that like only has putter aces, so they're never exciting. All right, on to the next topic. We have to address the elephant in the room, the trophy. So it's been the buzz of the internet. Everybody's been talking about it. Here's what I want to know. Was the trophy actually that bad, or was it just an overreaction? Does disc golf still have a trophy problem, or are we just hyper-focused on it at this point? And then if so, why does this keep happening? Why do we keep ending up in this situation where a trophy becomes the focus of an event when it really never should at this point? Ross, what do you think?
So my first reaction was, when I saw the reaction of everyone online, was everyone will just try to see that in everything. Guys will just try to see that anywhere. And then I was like, I have to take this to my wife and see what she says. Showed it to her, and her instant reaction was that it was a joke. It was like a bit. It was not real, because it was just so ridiculous. And once she said that, I was like, okay, maybe these people are onto something. Yeah, I don't know how this happens. I mean, there's people say there's like, ask the teenager online, whatever they say, do the opposite, kind of steer clear of that. I think the problem with trophies, and I do still think they are a problem, they definitely have gotten better, but the standard is you have everything from like the Turku Open trophy, which is like that massive like deer or whatever the heck it is, which looks like a professional trophy, all the way to something like this, can be like the insular nature of disc golf, to where people who are making trophies, people who are being commissioned to do trophies, tend to be people within the community, and there maybe could be a bit of I can see this happens locally sometimes, where there's like a fear of maybe offending people who put a lot of hard work into this. Like, I'm sure whoever made all the trophies for all the divisions spent a lot of hours, a lot of days grinding away at those. But maybe there should have been a little more check-in on how the progress is and how they were turning out, because I don't think in hindsight it's quite obvious, but even in the moment, I feel like someone should have said something.
You really feel like that. Hannah, what were your thoughts on Trophy Gate?
Yeah, so it's both actually a really bad trophy, but then there also was a huge overreaction online that did feel a little bit immature. But kind of like what Ross said, is a lot of these trophies are commissioned from within the disc golf world, which is wonderful, because there's so many artistic people and so many people who have talents outside of the sport or anything related to the sport directly, then it's great to utilize that. And part of my struggle with that, though, is these people are some of the people who know disc golf the best, right? It's a huge part of their lives. So you would think they would understand what a disc golf trophy should be like. And they would see, oh, we've had some weird trophies in the past. I don't want this one to become that too. But it really was disappointing for me scrolling on social media on Sunday night, though, because across Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I looked at the Pro Tour's post and PDGA's post, hundreds of comments, and maybe 10 of them were not mentioning the trophy at all. And that's really disappointing because I think this is part of why disc golf doesn't get taken seriously is things like this trophy overshadow the fact that Evelina won a women's major, one of the probably the biggest women's only tournaments in the country in our sport, and it almost could have gone to a playoff if we're really thinking about it. And yet that doesn't seem to matter as much as how weird the trophy looked. And to me, that's kind of a bad look for the sport overall and a little bit unacceptable.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's definitely one of the big pitfalls of the situation is that was the only focus at the end of the event. Gary, I know you had quite a rant on this, so give us the condensed version.
100%. This trophy was so stupid. I mean, up front, I'm going to say this. All right, I'm not an artist. I couldn't make anything ceramic to save my life, and I can appreciate the hard work that goes into making things, but I have two significant problems here. Number one, these were made by Tina Oakley, former owner of Whale Sacks and also a Bonnaroo attendee. She sells this stuff out of a shop in Florida. She posted in April that she's been spending a lot of time on them. That means that there have been 2.5 months since these have been started to be made. No one from the DGPT ever saw these. There was no concept design sent to them a month into this process. Like, and also, how did she get picked for this? She's an amateur potter in Florida. This event was in Wisconsin. Like, we couldn't find a more seasoned artist in Wisconsin to make something. And I disagree. We don't always have to have disc golfers do everything in disc golf. Let's incorporate and bring other people into the sport. And here's my other issue. They were so suggestive. Like, if you look at the photo of all 23 of them made, there were some that were less problematic than others. But after several comments on her own account where they said, hey, you know that these look like, you know what, right? She said, it's okay. So whether sarcastic or not, she knew what she was doing there. And in a major for women where we already know we're going to be facing issues with the transgendered athlete issue again, we also knowingly allow a trophy like this to make it to the end of the tournament. I don't know who approves these things, but they should seriously be talked to. Like, this is a problem. The Pro Tour knew it was a problem. We all know it was a problem because in their Instagram post after the event, they put videos from the event, but they put a winner photo from 2024 Worlds. They hid from their own problem. But trophies in the past have been silly, and if that's a problem, then no big deal. There's a big difference between a steering wheel with interesting history and a lighthouse that isn't even colored like a lighthouse. Like,
right.
Come on. Kids got these trophies.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
It was a crazy look. And yeah, that's the thing is, like, we've obviously with the trophy stuff in the past, I mean, there have been ones that are just kind of unprofessional or tough for people to really get. And those are one thing because they don't really overshadow the event. It's just more of a talking point that doesn't need to exist. And honestly, we've grown kind of numb to them. And I think that's why we haven't talked about trophies as much. Although I do think a lot of people have taken the feedback from the past years to heart and like really upped their game. And some events have always done a good job no matter what.
Mm-hmm. I did the same thing you did, Ross. I went right to my wife and I showed her a picture. I'm like, hey, look who won. I didn't say anything. And she's like, what's that? My wife's a very innocent person. Like she's not, I feel like everyone's, we got dirty minds or whatever, but even people who aren't even in the sport who don't think that way. All that. And that's what they thought. I mean, come on.
Yeah, no, it was pretty obvious one. And so that in that situation, it just can't happen. It's just, it gives disc golf a bad look because like Gary's saying, like somebody saw it. And I think everybody kind of mentioned, like, nobody wanted to hurt anybody's feelings. But if you're protecting a brand and trying to promote a professional sport, it just can't happen. And I think, it was also, this is a PDGA event. So this wasn't a Pro Tour event. I think that could have something to do with it. Sometimes a lot of that, the PDGA likes to turn all the responsibility to the local tournament director. So maybe there was nobody in authority that really got their eyes on this that should have. But
even worse.
Yeah, it just has to be shut down. It has to be.
Listen, if the tour of the PDGA needs someone to be the bearer of bad news, you can pay me to do it. I'll be happily look whoever it is in the eye, in this case Tina Oakley, and be like, thank you for your time, but you can take those back.
But one thing that's also so frustrating is, in sports, there's two moments that you want to have, like, all of the gravitas around, which is the moment someone wins something, whether it's like the last pitch in the World Series, time runs out in a football game, like that moment you want to be electric. And then also when the winner is holding the trophy. Like, those are the two things that as someone who is trying to run an event, trying to create an on-air product, it's for how do I have a whole design in which we have as many people there as possible, so that way when that final puck goes in, the background looks good. How do we make sure this trophy looks something that if we were to go to a brand and try, for sponsorship opportunities or whatever it may be, have an image that is powerful. And I don't know, it's embarrassing.
And here's the bottom line: this is a major tournament, right? Even if it was anything that didn't look crazy, it's still a piece of pottery. Like this trophy should look majestic for a major title. Yes. If it's going to be a piece of pottery, it would have to be done by a world-class pottery artist to make it like look at the standard that a trophy like that should be at. Like that's really the problem, is like they were never even on the right track. A piece of pottery, like that's a trophy for your local B tier.
If you look at the Instagram post on end of January, we saw her saying, "Look at my first ever attempt at a lighthouse." And then apparently at the beginning of April, she was, contracted to do these lighthouses. And like I said, 2.5 months. Like there was no, "Hey guys, here's what I'm working on so far. What do you think of the early concepts before I go through the chipping out, the painting, the glossing, all that stuff."
One thing also is this event, and maybe this is an unfair comparison on my part, but I don't think it is. This is the women's version of the USDGC. USDGC, get your name on a big trophy. You get a ring the next year. There's so much. I mean, obviously that's because that event has had so long to establish that tradition, but it really does elevate the winner of that and tries to kind of capture that Masters feel of like, once you win the USDGC, you're in this prestigious club. And the fact that this is what the PDGA does for the women's side, where it's the only event of the year where it is just women, all eyes are on them. And this is like, I don't know. It's super frustrating. And if I was Evelina, I mean, she seems like a really nice person. She probably would never say anything, or at least maybe not say anything in English. Like, I would be really angry if I was her that this is how.
Yeah. And here's
I
the
won
thing:
3 out of the last 6 majors. And to your
point about the USDGC trophy, one mistake that all these tournaments make, or a lot of them do, is that you don't need to take home some big trophy. Invest in one trophy that is used for those important pictures that you hoist. Maybe let them even take it home for a year and then bring it back like some other sports do. And then
does it great.
Right. And then give them something smaller, like give them a medal or a replica or something. But you can invest in just one trophy and keep it around. You don't have to buy these grandiose, insane trophies every year. Because anyways.
To your point, Ross, it feels like this event almost is more about the inclusivity of lots and lots of female players, and less about the prestige of winning a major.
It is, right?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like I agree with Ross. It's like this is the one women's only event, and there's divisions all the way down to FJ10, and you've got like FP75. Like it's an incredible event, and there is no prestige to it. And then stuff like this happens, and like you're pointing out, like these were given to kids, and maybe the other divisions didn't look as egregious, but at some point, like feelings aside, you have to protect the brand and the people paying money to play this event and to have a good time.
It definitely feels like they treat the event, at least from this trophy, seeing like the courses that they choose and like the on-air product, that they view this more as like a Masters major or an AM major, opposed to giving it, it's one of the 4 majors that FPO women are trying to win every year.
Right.
It definitely feels, it sucks. It stinks for the women that,
when you're having that many players in a giant AM field like that, it's almost impossible to focus on just one division. Like, you set yourself up for failure a little bit at that point. You need almost a second committee. Like the best way to run that, if you want to run it that way, is have all the other divisions play in an AM side, like alongside the pro tournament or before it, and then separate tournament director, separate venue, and make it like a pro tours do it. Have an AM side basically. Like that's how they should run that event, because it is cool that you get all those female disc golfers in one space, and it could be better. Trying to do it all at once like that just doesn't make any sense. That was trophy talk. Had to cover it. Probably a good thing Brody wasn't here. Anyways, all right, on to the last topic here for our final topic. We got a little fan submission here, and this fan wants to know, Who is the most overrated disc golfer right now? Why are they getting more hype than they deserve? So, Hannah, who are we throwing under the bus?
Okay, well, before Silas changes my name to AB Hater, just let me get through my spiel first, okay? So for me, the most overrated player right now is AB. I know. Statmando has him ranked second in both of their power rankings, and he is currently second in Pro Tour point standings. And let's face it, he's probably one of the most exciting players to watch, and he draws a ton of attention from fans in a way that that other players just don't. But he also hasn't broken through in ways like Gannon has. It feels to me like AB's in a very similar place as Eagle was in 2022. They both are coming off great seasons with multiple wins, but the majors are really where you make your mark. And we did see Eagle take down the European Open in 2022, so maybe this is the year that AB gets his major as well. But for him to be currently ranked second feels kind of overhyped. I think Nicklaus or even Isaac would be good options. Ricky's pretty close up there too. And I think him being overrated is maybe more of a testament of how big that gap is between Gannon and whoever it may be in second place. And if Gannon takes down more than one major this year, then I think that just kind of cements the gulf that separates him from the rest of the field. So don't get me wrong, maybe there's a chance that AB gets his major this year and this hype is all worth it, but I think there's probably a better chance that Gannon and Isaac won't let him.
All right. Well, that was
what ranking was that, Hannah, that you referenced him being second in?
Point standings.
He's second in tour point standings, and Statmando has him ranked second in both of their power rankings.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
That hurt. All right, Gary. Don't say AB.
No, it's a difficult question because I love disc golf and getting into all the stories of it, and I try to think about what player takes up more mental space than they deserve to. And my brain went immediately right to, I know he's a little bit down the list, but Aaron Gossage. I feel like everybody keeps trying to shoehorn him into being competitive. And the number of times this year I've heard people go, well, this course looks good for Goose. This is going to be his course. He's going to do well this week. It happens all the time, and he just doesn't perform. And I'm not suggesting he's not a good player, but people just keep trying to make him more competitive than he is. He's outside of the Tour Championship cut line right now, and he averages 31st after 8 events. I also genuinely don't understand how he can be 86th on tour in C1X putting. He's below 70% in C1X putting. That's crazy. Just something's got to give for him. And he's getting less than half the views on his YouTube channel than his counterpart Ezra. If he doesn't have another pro in his video, they don't perform well. I want to see him succeed. I like his personality. And even though people think he complains a lot, I appreciate his course criticisms, but he needs to fix his game because the views are going to disappear. People are going to stop talking about him. And he's going to become the next James Conrad. Over on the FPO side, the most overrated players are Erica Stinchcomb and Madison Walker. I'm talking specifically when it comes to their coverage because my word, is it getting unbearable to watch FPO pros produce. Every single bad shot is the course's fault or it's bad luck. There's no critical commentary. They think they're hilarious. They're not. It's time for a change. Go read the comments on the first round video. Gary. I'm sorry. The not funny geese. The not geese. They're the not geese right now.
Oh man, I like Goose. The problem with Goose is because he kind of hit the upward trajectory for a second there. So people started talking about it a lot because they wanted to be kind of on the inside, oh yeah, Goose might pop off here. And then he just never really did. He almost won a couple events, including Worlds, and then just kind of putting catches up to everybody except Evelina. Ross, who's your overrated player right now?
Gary, I like you, but comparing Aaron Gossage to a world champion, a United States disc golf champion, a Maple Hill champion, the Idlewild champion is ludicrous. Don't slander my man James Conrad like that. I was between two people, and one of them was Goose. I'm glad I came in ready to talk about two people. And that's Ricky Wysocki. I think people, maybe have, because there was a stretch in which he was absolutely dominant. Can you guys hear that? I have a fire alarm going off in my hallway. Okay. Sorry about that. In 2022, he won 4 tour events in the Tour Championship. But since then, he's won the... Can you hear that?
I can now. Composure, Ross. Talk through it. It's not that bad. Talk through it.
Is the only events he has won since 2022 are the Preserve, which is a spray and pray course. Kind of, I think, is an event that if I was power ranking events, that if someone won would be a little lower down on the list in terms of how impressed I am. And the other two events were in Europe with weaker fields. I think people maybe are a little, captivated by maybe his top consistency, his consistency of getting top tens. I don't think Ricky should ever be someone who's talked about as someone who could win an event anymore. I'm not even talking about the majors, just talking about weekly tour events. Until he turns it around and puts together a season like 2022, I think he's just a top 10 merchant.
Oh man, Stevie hot takes from Ross. Holy cow! So I was clip that.
Man,
Sheesh.
I was thinking about putting Paul on the list, but Ricky, that's an interesting one.
Whew. I mean, it's a tough one. Like when you're looking for overrated right now, like, I think there was a while there where there was a lot of popular players who just weren't doing great in disc golf. But like you talk about Ricky, like I think it's just like his history kind of precedes him a little bit. So there are guys that can kind of hang on to that reputation a little longer. And I mean, hey, you want to say anything about Rick? Dude doesn't want a major in forever at this point. It's been like 8 years. So there is a lot to be said about that. All right, let's get on to our final topic. Ross, Gary, here we go. So besides the obvious answer of money, which of these is holding back disc golf the most as a professional sports business, and which is the easiest to fix? Number one, lack of manicured courses. Number two, not enough high-level players. Number three, broadcast professionalism. And number four, in-person event execution. So 4 important cognates of having a good pro sports business. Which of these is the most important, and which is the easiest to fix? Gary, would you like to go first or second?
First, please.
Go ahead.
I think this is one of the toughest questions we've ever had on here because I kept coming up with other things that should have been on this list and then ping ponging back and forth between what's on the list. So I think it's pretty easy to rule out not having enough high level players because we do have some small issues when the field gets split. But for the most part, the MPO field is very, very competitive. FPO is getting more parity than ever before. And I think our talent pool is split pretty well between the US and the Euro market. So they're satisfying both sides of the aisle. But I'm going to say it's going to have to go with broadcast professionalism. And I'm picking that one because I think the thing that should be on this list is actually getting people to subscribe and view the broadcast. That's one thing that's holding us back. So I'm going to pick broadcast professionalism because once we get the people to subscribe, I think we're not meeting them with the best that we have to offer. And so it's because our production is very scattered. I think our commercials are repetitive, lame, and at times even inappropriate. The camera work is improving, but it's not top tier yet. And I think the commentary needs a lot of work in most cases. So, like I said, while I think the biggest problem is getting subscribers, it makes the broadcast, professionalism very, very important. I don't think courses are necessarily turning people off of viewing like the broadcast is, and in-person event attendance is only a fraction of the customer base at the moment. So, but when it comes to which one's the easiest to fix, I'm going to have to say that's really tough because, we've heard to no end that event staff is hard to come by. And it can feel like event options get stale and repetitive when it comes to we have a lack of private courses. So making meaningful course changes is very limited and hard to do. And changing the broadcast isn't easy due to things like lack of technical staff for filming, contracts with personalities, and a lack of a perceived problem in the space. I think people genuinely think we have a great product when we don't. And so it feels like nothing is very easily fixed, but I'm going to have to go with the in-person event execution because we do have examples of events that run smoothly and professionally and are very, very entertaining for people. And since those examples already exist, we have models that can be studied and taught.
Yeah, very true. Gary, I couldn't have subscribers on the list because then it just goes right back to money. I was trying to make a list that the answer didn't directly relate to money.
Yeah, I know.
It solves all of our problems. All right, Ross, what do you think?
This is tough because I actually think it's all of them except not high-level players. I think if you look at Maple Hill as an event, that is a course that visually is very interesting. It's different than all other courses on tour in terms of how many water hazards there are, the Christmas tree aspect of it, and the crowd there. The crowd there has kind of created the lore and the energy around that event that makes it one of the most looked forward to events by people who do consume disc golf content. It's hard to replicate that at every event. Some places have tried to. I mean, we're going to see it at Des Moines this weekend, where they've tried to copy the 8 holes with whatever the B people are. The Hive, I think, is what they go by. But really, I do think it comes down to the main issue is broadcast professionalism. I don't think it has as much to do with commentary as we like to talk about, because that's low hanging fruit. It is, and I guess it does connect to money, but it is truly like what you are watching visually can be really tough sometimes. Part of that is the nature of disc golf and the fact that it's played in the woods, and it's really difficult to follow the full track of the disc. But the lack of the number of cameras that are on the course, in terms of, one thing that's really exciting about if you're watching a golf tournament is it is cutting. The second someone is done with a shot and the ball comes to rest, they are cutting to a new shot. If you're watching, you're locked in. It keeps it exciting. You're seeing a lot of different players, a lot of different storylines develop all at once. So if they were able to kind of elevate, what they are putting on screen in terms of how they're capturing shots and the number of shots that they're capturing, I think that would really help keep people's attention locked in. And also, you may catch shots that can go viral. You'll catch an ace, you'll catch a throw in, you'll catch 100-foot putt that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise caught, which can always have the opportunity to get more eyeballs. So I think it's a little of everything besides not enough high-level players, because I think on both sides, there's a lot of really good talent.
It is an interesting conversation because, I think the production makes sense, and obviously that's where the most eyeballs are. I think the other things, especially the manicured courses and the in-person event, I think those are underrated in the sense that people would be surprised. If we showed up and every course was perfectly manicured, I think that would have more of an effect than we'd think. But I think with the broadcast, it's the storytelling aspect of it that they're missing. And then, just more cameras. And have we really talked about recently, what does it really take to get 4 more cameras, 3 more cameras, and a few more operators? You could change an entire broadcast by being able to film 1 or 2 more cards, just in the amount of dead space you could fill, because we still have way too many B-roll of a pine tree with a leaderboard going on in the broadcast that could be filled with shots. We're rerunning commercials that are not being paid for as many times as they're having to be rerun and rerun. Being able to fill the space a lot more would make the broadcast way better. And it's just, I'd be curious to know, what part of their plan is to up the amount of cameras, because they've obviously somewhat done that, but they need more. They need more.
You look back 2 years ago, and I think we're definitely improving. Having some static live cameras on certain holes is pretty interesting.
They've tracked down the hot scores a bit better in modern times. That's something that didn't happen before. Sometimes from across a lake, but they do their best. Hey, we can't have towers on every hole. It's not where we're at. So
I do think you're right, though, Trev, about the manicured courses. I mean, if you think it's of some of the biggest events that are on tour, whether it's Green Mountain Championship, that course is just watching it on screen. The beauty comes through it. Maple Hill, as I mentioned, the Northwest with both Milo and Lendovere, those are just very visually appealing courses. And then, not to throw this course under the bus, but the Beast at Waco, it's this looks like the park down the street.
Yeah, it immediately grabs the viewer. And if you think about it, in golf, what are 2 events we had recently in golf? The Masters and the U.S. Open. All of the storytelling surrounding those events and most of the marketing were completely related to the golf courses. Augusta, like always, and Oakmont, being as difficult it was, that is the center of their marketing pitch. They're not even talking as much about the players, or they're talking about what this course looks like and how it's going to play. So, the course can be the centerpiece, but it's tougher when you're talking about how many playgrounds and baseball fields you'll have to avoid. And so I think that is something that, obviously it's on everybody's radar. We'd all like to have very nice courses, but I think that, it would go a long way. But
that's actually a good point. I think the biggest thing that's not on this list is probably related to marketing around the tour. They don't do a really great job of leading into events to build hype for an event. You can make the odd post about who won last year or whatever, but I mean, to really showcase a course ahead of time, maybe talk about what some of the signature holes are.
Totally.
Or even things they've launched this other stuff, match play started, but when's the last time we really heard anything legitimate about match play on the tour? Or the Q series that's really big. Who knows who's in lead in the Q series?
The PGA Tour, they treat every event like its own business, and there's such a plan into, okay, we have the waste management coming up. let's show the time lapse of them building the grandstands around hole 16. Let's show crowds running in from last year. Like, let's build for an entire week before we get to the weekend and you see this event. Whereas when there's a major happening in disc golf, the crowd does it themselves. Like, we hype it up on our own. We talk about it. We get excited about it. But for something like Des Moines coming up, you know, it just kind of arrives on our calendar and we might see highlights from last year, but we're not going to get some cinematic video talking about the fans in Des Moines, right? Like, how far would it go for one well done video just describing the fan environment in Des Moines and showcasing those fans and that venue? Like, it would get people excited. Like, that people would be like, hey, maybe I should go, or I definitely need to tune in to see. Like, there's more that needs to be done in that area for sure.
What would happen if for one event week, none of the podcasts talked about the upcoming event and nobody did practice round videos on YouTube? I mean, you'd see very clearly how big the hole is in marketing for an event.
Totally. Yeah. A lot of the marketing gets done by the outside media for sure. But speaking of marketing, be sure to show up to the Des Moines the Discmania Challenge, because Hunter and I are going to be there. And we're actually be playing in the Creator Challenge on Thursday. I think you can still get tickets or watch it on the Disc Golf Network. So tune in for that. Hopefully Ulibarri and I can take it down. Not sure how that's going to work. Congrats, Gary. You're our winner tonight. Well done.
Thank you. Hey, it's really nice outside, guys. I know it's really, really hot out, and we all go and play our courses on the weekends. Yeah, I want to challenge everyone over the next couple of weeks to go do something for their course this up, in the 2 weeks. Go do some work, clean out some rough areas, volunteer in one way or another, because those courses are kept up by people, and those people need help.
That's true. Hey, take one hole on your course and make it yours. Be like, every time people show up to this hole, it's going to be flawless. I've seen people do that before, and it works wonders. You're like, wow, this looks great. The underbrush is cleared out, and there's no garbage. Fantastic. Anyways, that was another episode of Debate Night. Great episode tonight. Some fun topics there. Hopefully you enjoyed. We'll be back next week. And then I believe after that, we'll have an off week potentially, or maybe a special show, because there's some crazy shenanigans going on at Foundation. You'll have to hear about it at a later time, but we'll see you then.